The battlefield was a wasteland of ash and blood. The sky, once a vibrant blue, was now choked with smoke, the sun a dim orange orb struggling to pierce the haze. The war between the Nephilim and the mortal realms had raged for decades, leaving scars on the land and the souls of those who fought. The Nephilim, towering beings of divine and mortal lineage, were once revered as protectors. But now they were feared as tyrants, their once noble intentions twisted by pride and power. Among the fallen that day was Seraphina, a Nephilim warrior of unparalleled strength and grace. Her wings, once radiant and golden, were now tattered and stained with blood. Her armor, forged from celestial steel, was cracked and broken. She lay motionless in the mud, her breathing shallow, her life slipping away. Around her, the surviving soldiers, both mortal and Nephilim, turned their backs. To them, she was a symbol of the war's futility, a reminder of the destruction their kind had wrought. No one dared to help her. No one except Kael, a mortal soldier with nothing left to lose. Kael had seen Seraphina fight. He had watched her cut through enemy lines with a blade of pure light, her wings casting shadows that seemed to dance with life. But he had also seen her hesitate. In the heat of battle, she had spared a mortal child caught in the crossfire, shielding the boy with her own body. That moment had stayed with Kael, a glimmer of hope in the darkness of war. Now, as he stood over her broken form, he felt a surge of defiance. The other soldiers muttered curses under their breath, calling her a monster, a traitor to both sides. But Kael saw something else. He saw pain. He saw regret. And he saw a chance, not just to save her but to change the course of the war. Kael knelt beside Seraphina, his hands trembling as he pressed a cloth to her wounds. Her eyes fluttered open, golden irises glowing faintly in the dim light. She tried to speak, but her voice was a hoarse whisper. Why are you helping me? Because no one else will, Kael replied simply. He slung her arm over his shoulders and lifted her with all the strength he could muster. She was heavy, her divine blood making her denser than any mortal, but Kael refused to falter. He staggered through the battlefield, ignoring the jeers and curses of his comrades. "Leave her, Kael," one soldier shouted. "She's not worth it." "She's one of them," another spat. "Let her die like the rest." But Kael kept walking, his resolve hardening with every step. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get her away from the battlefield. He found an abandoned cave hidden in the hills, its entrance obscured by thick vines. Inside, he laid Seraphina down on a bed of soft moss and tended to her wounds as best he could. Days passed, and Seraphina's strength slowly returned. She watched Kael with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You risked your life for me," she said one evening as they sat by a small fire. "Why? I am your enemy." Kael poked at the flames with a stick, his expression thoughtful. "You spared that child," he said. "In the middle of a battle, you chose to save a life instead of taking one. That's not something an enemy would do." Seraphina looked away, her wings twitching uneasily. "I have done terrible things," she admitted. "I have fought in a war I no longer believe in. I have killed mortals and Nephilim alike. But that child, he reminded me of what I used to fight for. A world where both our kinds could live in peace." Kael nodded. Maybe it's not too late to fight for that world again. As Seraphina healed, the two formed an unlikely bond. Kael told her of his life before the war, of the village he had lost and the family he would never see again. Seraphina, in turn, shared stories of the celestial realm, of the beauty and wonder that had once filled her heart. They spoke of their dreams for the future, of a world where mortals and Nephilim could coexist. But their peace was short-lived. One night, the cave was surrounded by a group of Nephilim soldiers, their leader a towering figure with wings of blackened steel. "Seraphina," he growled, his voice like thunder. "You are a traitor to your kind. Surrender, and your death will be swift." Kael stepped forward, his sword drawn. "She's not going anywhere." The Nephilim leader laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Kael's spine. "You think you can stop us, mortal? You are nothing but an insect." Before Kael could react, Seraphina rose to her feet, her wings spreading wide. Though still weakened, her presence was commanding. "Leave him be," she said, her voice steady. "If you want me, you'll have to go through me." The battle that followed was fierce. Seraphina fought with a ferocity that belied her injuries, her blade cutting through the air like a bolt of lightning. Kael stood by her side, his mortal strength no match for the Nephilim but his determination unyielding. Together they held their ground, driving back their attackers one by one. When the last of the Nephilim soldiers fled, Seraphina collapsed to her knees, her strength spent. Kael knelt beside her, his hands stained with blood, both his and hers. "We can't keep running," he said. "We have to end this war." Seraphina nodded, her golden eyes filled with resolve. "There is a way," she said. "The celestial forge. It is the source of the Nephilim's power. If we destroy it, the war will end." "Then that's what we'll do," Kael said without hesitation. The journey to the celestial forge was perilous. They faced countless dangers, from treacherous terrain to enemy patrols. But with each challenge, their bond grew stronger. Kael's courage and resourcefulness complemented Seraphina's strength and wisdom, and together they became a force to be reckoned with. When they finally reached the forge, a massive structure of glowing crystal and molten light, they were met by an army of Nephilim. Seraphina stepped forward, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. "This war ends now," she declared. "I will not let our kind continue down this path of destruction." The Nephilim hesitated, their loyalty to their leaders wavering in the face of Seraphina's conviction. Seizing the moment, Kael and Seraphina fought their way to the heart of the forge. With a final, desperate strike, Seraphina plunged her blade into the forge's core, shattering it in a blinding explosion of light. When the dust settled, the Nephilim's power was gone. Their wings faded, their strength diminished. But for the first time in decades there was peace. Seraphina and Kael stood amidst the ruins, their hands clasped together. "It's over," Kael said, his voice filled with awe. "No," Seraphina replied, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's just the beginning." In the years that followed, Seraphina and Kael worked tirelessly to rebuild the world they had fought so hard to save. They became symbols of hope, proof that even in the darkest of times, courage and compassion could prevail. And though their journey had begun with one mortal's decision to save a fallen warrior, it ended with a legacy that would endure for generations to come.